Good morning and welcome to the Destiny Pharma PLC investor presentation. Throughout this recorded presentation, investors will be in listen-only mode. Questions are encouraged and can be submitted at any time by the Q&A tab situated in the right-hand corner of your screen. Just simply type in your questions and press send. The company may not be in a position to answer every question it receives during the meeting itself. However, the company will review all questions submitted today and publish responses where it is appropriate to do so. Before we begin, I'd like to submit the following poll. I'd now like to hand you over to Neil Clark, CEO. Good morning to you, sir.
Thanks, Alessandro. Good morning, everybody. So yes, we're here to talk through the very good, exciting news we announced on Friday. Obviously a partnering deal and an associated fundraising. And we'll obviously take questions, some of which have been submitted already, as was said. So if we move on through the slides, just acknowledging the disclaimer slides there. Just myself, I've been here for 7 years since the IPO in 2017. Previously at Ergomed, Cenis Pharmaceuticals, a long time in UK biotech, UK life science AIM companies, but very excited about working at Destiny and the potential of our pipeline, which we'll come to, and of course the recent event and the deal on Friday. So perhaps Sean, just a brief intro.
Yeah, hi, Sean Clayton, CFO. I've been at Destiny just over 4 years, having spent a long part of my career working in the city as a corporate financier before becoming CFO of a number of life science companies.
And we have obviously a very good executive and board. Details are on our website, destinypharma.com. And just revisiting Destiny Pharma, obviously many people on the call, I'm sure, are familiar with our strategy and what the company does, but we do have this focus on infection prevention and a long-term dedication to this space. Our Chief Scientific Officer, Dr. Bill Love, founded the company in the late 90s, always looking to bring forward novel, effective medicines to prevent infections, and built up our XF platform, which has delivered one lead candidate, XF73 nasal, which has completed excellent phase 2 data, heading towards phase 3s, and we hope partnering event. But also along that journey in the last 5-6 years since the IPO, we've also expanded the pipeline. We bought in the asset NTCDM3, which was the asset we partnered on the Friday with Sabella, which is ready to go into late stage studies, phase 3 studies. A very exciting, again, infection prevention asset, and also diversification, because it's a different technology to XF. So we've built a diversified late stage pipeline, which reduces risk. And the strategy for these assets is to secure partners for the heavy lifting. It's not just money; it's the expertise that pharma companies bring to carry out late stage studies, pre-marketing, registration, and of course launching and effectively selling these medicines. Because of course nothing really is a success in developing drugs until it's actually used by patients and delivering better outcomes. And we're very committed to doing that. Our primary goal is to improve patient care by reducing infections. And we're very pleased with the pipeline we have. Of course, we have earlier assets as well, which we probably won't talk about too much today. But with that backdrop, there's also, perhaps highlighted as well through the COVID-19 pandemic, the problem of superbugs, antimicrobial resistance. There is a clear clinical need for innovation in this whole area of infectious diseases and especially infection prevention. If we don't understand now the benefits, of good, effective, sensibly priced medicines, it's obvious that prevention is better than cure. We've seen that, the grisly details of the COVID-19 pandemic, and both of our lead assets are positioned to prevent, damaging infections which can lead to death, and along that journey, severe patient suffering, and of course significant healthcare costs. So a really worthwhile cause. We position ourselves. We believe we're a very strong case of an impact investment opportunity, and I think that's reflected in the interest we've had from existing and new institutional shareholders who've come in to the fundraising, which we'll come on to. So a really strong backdrop to what we're trying to do in terms of a clear clinical need, but also our products stand alone as good products with, as I said, good profiles. There's a need in the market. They can be made, have good low cost of goods. They can be priced sensibly. And of course, with M3, you have the validation of a deal. Somebody else is validating a whole approach and story around M3. Sabella Pharmaceuticals have entering into this partnership with us, and they're only doing that because they also believe in the potential of NTCDM3. And in terms of the deal itself, so this has always been a key part and remains a key part of our strategy, is to find partnerships to help us, especially with late stage clinical studies. As I said earlier, brings expertise, brings funding, and brings a route through to the market, which is of course the true test, as I say again, of these products. They're only really a success when they're used by patients and improving healthcare outcomes and saving healthcare systems money. And that's what we're aiming to do. And what this deal delivers is and Sean could perhaps talk a bit more detail, but deliver some big buy world dollar milestones, up to 570 million over the course of development and product sales. This is for US rights. $20 million of those milestones we potentially could receive as the product goes successfully through phase 3s and is registered over the next 2 or 3 years. Also, for every sale, we'll get double-digit royalties on a sliding scale between 10 and 18%. But importantly for us, this transaction removed the requirement for us to actually invest any further in the clinical development of NTCDM3. Sebela Pharmaceuticals are now prepared to spend the money to take it through its final clinical studies to meet the requirements of the FDA in the US, but also EMA in Europe. And that is a significant amount of funding, tens of millions of dollars that will need to be invested. Destiny Pharma does not now need to raise that money to carry out those studies. They will be carried out by Sebela Pharmaceuticals. That's a significant sort of cash overhang removed through this partnering deal. And I know that we get questions later on upfronts and terms, and I guess the discussion the board had in terms of negotiations was the balance between perhaps having a lower upfront was that we actually removed this cash overhang from funding the clinical studies. But we think a very good structure and a great partner in Sebela, who are an excellent company focused in this GI space. They have US rights. We have rights for the rest of the world. Sebela still have a minority carried interest in anything we do there, but we have the majority rights, so we can do other deals in Europe, rest of the world. And we think they're a great partner. So we want them now, subject to closing all this at the general meeting, we want them to crack on and get on with clinical studies, and we will deliver the clinical trial supply material later this year, as previously announced, planned. And at the same time, though, they saw us as a listed company. Obviously, public information on our finances. We've always said that our current cash balance runs to through to the summer. So we're looking at ways of strengthening the balance sheet, and this deal is contingent on us doing that. And hence, we're concurrent with closing the deal. We're also looking to raise sums of money, and we're very pleased with how that went and the support we received. So that's really a summary. Obviously, there's more detail in the 2 press releases. And I'm trying to think. I mean, just going back to that, Sean, is there anything you wanted to add there on the deal terms, or I think I've summarised?
I think you've covered it, Neil, to be honest.
Okay, well, we'll wait for questions then. And then in terms of Sebela, again, look at their website, please. But they're an ambitious company. They're private equity backed. They're focused on revenues and growth and profits, as well as investing in late stage clinical development. So a really good fit for NTCDM3. And again, a validation of the potential of that program. They're only doing this because they also believe in the potential of NTCDM3. So we're really looking forward to working with them. They've demonstrated their expertise through due diligence, and of course their sort of public performance. You can again please look at their website. They're a private company, so different to perhaps public company announcements, but a lot of good information there, and they're very experienced and know what they're doing. And then, yeah, perhaps Sean, I'll hand back to you for just where we, just where the sort of transaction summary again, just a bit more detail, perhaps on what I've already said.
Yes. So, as Neil mentioned, as part of the deal with Sebela, we were required to strengthen the balance sheet, and hence why we also did a fundraising alongside the Sebela transaction. And as we announced on Friday, looking to raise up to 8 million via placing, and then a further 1 million via the open offer to all shareholders. As Neil mentioned, we're very pleased that the placing was well received by investors. We've had sort of more than 7 million, and both from existing and quite a number of new shareholders who've come onto the register, which is very pleasing. In terms of the use of proceeds, we've set out there the key use of those proceeds, which are primarily around completing the clinical trial material manufactured for the M3 program, which is part of the obligation under the Sebela transaction, as well as also using some of the funds to further XF73 nasal around CMC manufacturing. We'll come on to that in terms of what we're looking to do there in terms of partnering. And then also, as mentioned, needing to strengthen the balance sheet as part of closing the Sebela transaction. There's just some information on timetable, which again was set out, I think, in the announcement, where we looked at the general meeting on the 16th of March to seek shareholder approval for the fundraise.
Yeah, and obviously from pre-submitted questions, an obvious question and something, of course, that was carefully considered as we closed the funding was the price and the discount, obviously, to the share price. So we had good interest from the institutions we met. I think the brokers have commented that we had actually quite a high hit rate of interest from, I think it was 20 odd meetings, Sean.
Yeah.
The balance to that was obviously the interest that institutions showed. As always, they have their job to do to get value as they invest. Could be our money, could be our pension funds, and the price that was proposed, I guess, by the book in terms of reaching that 7 million number was the discounted price. Comments from shareholders that we can share broadly was obviously they look back over perhaps the price over the last 3-4 months. There's been obviously a rise since December into January, which was still below numbers that we would like to achieve, obviously, but investors, when they were looking at the opportunity, look back and looked at funding the company or for us to raise money at that lower price. So that was where we attracted interest. So the board had very serious discussions with advisors and internally, and took the decision to close at the price and the quantum that we're disclosing here. Obviously, the open offer element gives people the opportunity to come in at that price, not to be excluded. But it was a difficult decision. Remember, on the board, many of us are shareholders, including some quite large shareholders as well, employees and others. So it was taken very seriously, but do take on board the sensitivity of such discounts. It's not unusual in current markets. There's been other recently sort of life science companies raising money, and we're in a similar range to that. So obviously markets are tough in that backdrop, but fully accept the comments from existing shareholders. I've been in this position before as a shareholder that it is a difficult difficult discount to accept, but that is what the markets would allow us to do, and we took the decision to take it. We are a loss-making company. The deal negotiations, the terms, these are the terms that we could get. It wasn't possible for us to find funding through a different route, and we're very well positioned now, very strong balance sheet pushing forward, and we think there's obviously more value to come, and we'll be very well placed as markets return as well to benefit from that. But fully accept comments that we're getting on sensitivity to some of the discount.
Yeah, I think just to add, Neil, as well, it's important that everyone understands that this is about deal certainty as well with Sabella in terms of closing this transaction. We had a minimum raise we had to do, and I think also part of our share base is the ISPCT funds, which we're not able to invest in this round because we have reached our cap on the ISPCT funding limits. So it was necessary to go out to new investors and secure this funding in order to close the Sabella transaction.
Okay, so moving on. So we'll talk now about the company. Obviously, questions at the end we can take and refer to. So we won't rush through, as it were, but definitely in terms of the pipeline, we, as I've said before, we have established since the IPO, we've built on the XF platform, which was the driver for the IPO, and added 2 assets in the area of biotherapeutics, microbiome, our late stage M3 asset, which has obviously got the validation, we believe, of the partnering deal. We also have our earlier spore cough program, which is a nasal spray, looking to address COVID-19 and influenza, which is in partnership with Sporgen, which is, people are expecting news there, but we're working with a partner there, but that's been going well, and we will put out more news on that. And then our XF platform, which again was the reason for the IPO. We own the intellectual property here, and XF73 nasal was the reason for the IPO funding, and we delivered excellent phase 2 data a while ago now, back in 21. The data has been analysed, and we've spoken to the regulators, as people know, in 22. We have a clear plan now for phase 3s, and that now is in a data room, and we have active discussions ongoing targeting partners. We actually have one partner in the data room, and we look to deliver a deal there. So we're looking to follow on with XF73 nasal in the next 12 months, to do a deal, as we've done with M3 and Sabella. It could be a different structure, of course, but definitely that's the plan. So we want that asset to be in phase 3s in 2024, and the way to do that is to get a partner who can fund the majority of those studies and move us forward. And we're now, with a strong balance sheet, in a very good place to progress the asset internally towards those phase 3s, but also stronger position for discussions, etc. And then the earlier program, dermal programs, progressing well as well, largely grant funded. So a good, strong, diversified late stage pipeline, and that is what any biotech would want. And we'll continue to look for partnering deals to get that validation, but also for the partners to bring cash and expertise to reduce the amount of money we need to get these assets proven and to the market, which of course, again, is, as I said repeatedly, is the key goal of the company. And in terms of M3, again, many of you would have heard this before. It's a nasty gut infection caused by toxic strains of a bacteria called Clostridium, or now Clostridioides difficile, in the large intestine, colon. The initial infections can be treated pretty well by lower cost antibiotics, which can reduce the infection, remove infection in say 70% of patients, but 30% of patients then have recurrence. And it's this stepladder of recurrence which we're looking to stop. So we're looking to prevent the recurrence of the infection, and we're looking to do that by giving patients a non-toxic strain of Clostridioides difficile, which basically kicks out the toxic strain in the gut, reduces the inflammation and the damage caused by the toxins, and you have a recovery from that recurrent from the C. diff infection. You don't actually have this recurrence. So stopping the recurrence is definitely a clear clinical need, poorly served, and M3 as validated, but again by the partnering deal with Sebela, is very well positioned to bring forward a new treatment option and really be positioned at sort of the bottom of that step ladder to stop the recurrence, this 25 to 30% recurrence rate. And then as people have increasing recurrences of C. diff, very nasty infections, and unfortunately 29,000 deaths a year reported in the US. So a very clear opportunity. M3 was in license back in 2020, so we're very pleased that we bought in an asset, identified an asset, bought it in, done a lot of work on the manufacturing, regulatory, clarifying clinical plans, and again have now moved it through to a partnering transaction. And our reasons for bringing in the asset in the first place were their excellent phase 2 data, 5% recurrence rate, and again Sebela have looked at all of this data, and they also are very excited about its potential, we believe, as it moves forward towards phase 3s. Why otherwise would they have done the deal? And where M3 sits at the top there in blue, with the blue dotted lines, it can come into the left more than other competitive treatments, perhaps the fecal matter plays that people may have heard of. We also will have lower cost of goods, better safety profile, because NTCD is a naturally occurring strain of Clostridioides difficile. A small percentage of people in America actually have it in their guts where it was originally identified. So it's a very safe, naturally occurring strain of C. diff. And the clinical data is the key thing here. Again, the recurrence rate, 5% recurrent rate from the best dose in the phase 2. That means 95% of patients didn't have further recurrences of a C. diff infection. If we can deliver close to that in the phase 3, or if Sebela can deliver close to that in the phase 3, we'll have class-leading data, a low cost of goods, an easy-to-use tablet. 7 days in a row with a glass of water in the morning, you're colonized with M3, and you stop this recurrence in its tracks, as it were. So really well positioned, and again backed up by historical great phase 2 data, great science from Professor Dale Girding, but also we've moved the asset forward. And again, we now have this partnership deal, this validation from a very expert partner in Sebela Pharmaceuticals, who are looking to take it forward through phase 3s and launch and sell the drug in the USA. Not the drug, sorry, the medicine. And the study design, there's a lot of work's gone into this on our side, agreeing with regulators the phase 3 study size and design, which you can imagine is a key thing in the data room for partners to look at. So again, Sebela have looked into all of this, and they may have their own views on certain things, but they obviously are very happy, we believe, with the approach we've taken in discussions with the regulators. So we've added value there, and again enabled us to close the deal. And this is exactly what we're looking to do with our other asset, XS73 nasal, is have this clear plan of what the regulators want for the phase 3s, helps us in partnering discussions, so that potential partners can get clarity on what's required in terms of size, cost, timelines for phase 3 studies. And they will take a view, of course, on what we've presented, but we have the confidence, because we've discussed these with regulators, that we have very good, clear plans. In both cases, we'll look to continue investing in manufacturing to supply clinical trial supply. We don't intend to get involved in the manufacturing for actual commercial supply 2 or 3 years down the track. And the market size for M3 is very large. We believe it can be, in the US, $500 million sales approximately, and other markets in Europe and elsewhere. And the Sabella deal, they have US rights, but we have the opportunity to now to go out and continue to talk to European, South American partners and other territories, excluding China, where we already have an agreement with China Medical Systems, and try and find other partners and do other deals around the M3 asset. So we'll look to close that in the next 12 to 18 months, and again deliver further value recognition and financial income into the company by doing those partnering deals. So a clear target still with M3 is to do further partnering deals. And again, giving ourselves a pat on the back here. People may recall that we bought this asset in November, December 2020. We've done a great job since then in improving the package and the validation again of a partnering deal. So we believe, and we know from our internal analyses, we have added significant value by bringing in this asset and closing the deal. Yet to be reflected in the share price, but I think as analysts and some of the notes already are coming out, look at what we've done here. This is a great validation of the clear value in the M3 program alone, which is a multiple of our current market cap. So need to do more, obviously, in terms of other partnering deals, and also begin to focus or increase focus now on XF73 nasal, which is our other program targeting decolonization of the nose prior to surgery to kill the bacteria Staphylococcus aureus that can live in the nose, and approximately a third of the world has it in its nose. If you do, then you're at a greater risk of a post-surgical infection. So nasal decolonization is recognized, best practice by all most hospitals across the world, Asia, Europe, Americas, but it's poorly treated by an old antibiotic, mupirocin, and there are some antiseptic approaches. So it's an underserved market, but very large, driven by the millions of operations, tens of millions of operations that are carried out each year, where many patients are at risk of a post-surgical infection. And as with M3, and as we've learned from COVID, when you get an infection, your individual health can be damaged, which is not good, but also other people can be affected, cross-contamination, and of course the healthcare burden, the costs of treatment, longer patient stays, all of those add up to some significant numbers. So there's a clear healthcare benefit of reducing infections, and XF73 nasal has always been targeted at this market. As I said, it was the lead program in the company when we did the IPO back in 2017, and it's continued to be our focus, a lead focus, and also continue to be a very attractive opportunity where increasingly we have really sort of good feedback from physicians. Yuri Martin, our Chief Medical Officer, talking to doctors in hospitals, really enthusiastic about what we're trying to do here with XF73 as a novel nasal gel to prevent post-surgical infections. Comes from our XF platform. It's got great phase 2 data, effectively 99.5% of the bacteria in the nose killed with 4 doses in 24 hours before people go into cardiac surgery in the phase 2. Great data that's already been reported. And again, looking now to take that forward into phase 3 studies with partners. But along the way, we've continued to have very good discussions with the regulators. Previously, in America, the asset had been awarded QIDP status, qualifying infectious disease product status. So the FDA recognizing its novelty and also the clear clinical need. They want new products coming into this space in the US where there isn't really an approved product and only this old antibiotic mupirocin is used. So, a great backdrop. But again, high quality clinical data is key here. And also now, as we really look to accelerate partnering discussions, that next step for this program will be that validation of a partnering deal, as we've done with M3, and to get the partners to come on board to help with the phase 3s, potentially fund all, if not the majority of the phase 3s, but also to be there for the steps needed to get an approved product on the market and then sold. So that's a clear aim for us with XF73 to do a similar process as we've done with M3. And of course, we now have increased confidence, having closed a deal with Sabella, that we can of course do more deals on M3, but also with XF73. And its positioning here, this is a slide that's been really strengthened. We've been using this for several years now. With on the left, you see mupirocin, this old antibiotic, skin antibiotic that's been used. Nasal decolonization has to be given 2 or 3 times a day for 5 days to build up its effect. XF73 has clear advantages there. We delivered in 1 day. Excellent efficacy, XF73. It's a novel mechanism, much faster, acting against all strains, but also not leading to resistance. One of the big problems with mupirocin is one of these old antibiotics that does unfortunately lead to antimicrobial resistance, AMR, and the growth of superbugs. XF73 published data clearly supporting that its novel, fast, effective action doesn't lead to the generation of resistance. So clear advantages there. It's also designed into a nasal gel, non-irritant, and we're also building a very strong clinical data set, clearly backed up by clinical evidence showing that XS73 actually works and will deliver less post-surgical infections, which will give it clear advantages in the market. And at the same time, though, we have a good excellent safety profile, but also a good low cost of goods. So we can be, price competitive in a market which is not a market where you can price your treatment sort of multi-thousands of dollars. You do need to be pragmatic with your pricing approach. But again, having a good low cost of goods helps there. And on the right hand side, there's other approaches using antiseptics called hexadine, which go into the nose, but they do have their place in the market, but they have some issues, we believe, compared to XS73 in terms of novelty, safety, antimicrobial resistance. So definitely not surprising there is some competition in this space, but XS73 to date, clinical data set sets it out as a leader, and the feedback we get from our market research is very positive. And of course, we're looking, as we've done with M3, to get that partner on board to bring that further validation. Once you get a sort of hard-nosed pharmaceutical sales and marketing team interested in your product because they believe they can sell it and make money, then that really backs up the commercial profiling that we're talking about, as well as obviously we have the very strong scientific and clinical data supporting the profile of XS73. And again, the work we've been doing, as announced previously end of last year, a lot of work going on, clarifying the phase 3 studies required for XS73 with the FDA, and also meeting the requirements of EMA in Europe. We want to undertake these 2 phase 3s with a partner, of course, one in breast surgery, breast reconstruction following mastectomy, where you do get high infection rates. So patients, we believe, can be recruited into the study. It also takes us into a different surgery type. Remember, the phase 2 was in cardiac surgery patients. Then to go into another surgery type, we're looking to go into emergency orthopedic fracture surgery, again, where infection rates can be high, but also where we can recruit patients. So this package, a lot of detail in the data room, something partners are and will be looking at as they form their views on the phase 3 journey for XS73, and of course get an understanding of size of studies, cost, complexity, and timeline. So that's really important to have that in the data room, which we've done now. And at the same time, also, we're looking to push forward, continue, as we did with M3, with the manufacturing, so we can build up the strategy to the clinical trial supply for the clinical material that will be needed. The XS73 gel will be needed for the phase 3 studies. So the partner can focus more on clinical study designs and the market opportunity and the historical data, and we will deliver that clinical trial material. So ended the year in a really good place with XS73 nasal, and in simple terms, as I keep saying, we're going to look to do what we've done with M3. We'll look to do again with XS73, which is to find a great partner who can join us and take on board a lot of the work for the phase 3s and then commercialization, and probably again targeting US as the key market initially to get a deal done. But we shall see. We do have interest from global partners as well. And the market size, again, driven by the tens of millions of surgical procedures in the US alone. There's obviously there's certain procedures where there's higher infection rates where you could target the product initially. Obviously, this is where the partner will bring their skills of commercialization and market analyses, but we believe very robust data set that shows the market size, the market potential. Yes, the US is a very attractive initial market, which is often the case with many new drugs, but also opportunities in Europe and internationally as well, Japan, where again the old antibiotic mupirocin is still used as that sort of primary treatment for nasal decolonization. So a clear need in this space for novelty with a good, safe, fast, effective, sensibly priced medicine is exactly what XS73 is designed to do. So in summary, summary. Well, we've got the news flow. So obviously, in terms of news flow, what we're looking to do this year, obviously, we begin to close. I think we have a general meeting March 16th. We will then have closed the funding and the partnering deal. Sabella then will effectively take control through a steering committee. Of course, our members of our exec team will be on that, but effectively they take control of the clinical program. We'll push ahead with manufacturing, but obviously there'll be news then as Sabella start the activities there. We're also looking, as we said, to giving ourselves the target, and let's face it, the pressure of closing an XS73 nasal partnering deal, bringing forward our dermal programs, and finishing some preclinical work there and looking at where that will go into the clinic. And then into next year, of course, we have hopefully with a partner starting nasal phase 3 studies. So in 2024, we potentially can have both of our lead programs active in clinical studies. Fantastic achievement, with partnering deals and the earlier pipeline coming through as well. And then looking ahead, there is this other indication for M3, anti-CD3, which is primary prevention, which is when you would come even earlier in the C. diff cycle, as it were, to stop infections occurring in the first place. Now that would require a phase 2 study, and that we were quite interested in doing that. We think it's a very interesting line extension. Potentially that could come in a couple of years. We'd obviously have to, again, look at the cost, the size of the study, potential partnering grant opportunities. But that's something we'll look to do to have more, phase 2 clinical activity would be fantastic in our pipeline. And the potential also with XS73 with a phase 3 starting to actually have news from interim analyses, something we're looking to build into the program. Again, partner will have a view as well, but the potential to actually have some earlier readout. Otherwise, of course, the final data will come in 26, and both products potentially could be approved and launched in 27. And that's obviously, again, to come back to with those lead programs, that's our ultimate goal, is to see them on the market being used by patients. But an outline of the news flow. Obviously, other things will happen. We'll be working very hard to look at other opportunities, but from the current pipeline and portfolio, I think this is a good set of targeted news. And obviously, we need to crack on and deliver best we can, as we've done since the IPO, and keep investors updated with progress. But obviously, the XS73 partnering deal stands out as the key event that we need to secure in the next year. And yeah, just sorry, in terms of the summary, hopefully it comes across. We're very committed to building a large company in this space with a high quality pipeline. We've got the validation now of our first partnering deal. We have a good track record since the IPO. Yes, we've been later than we said we would be at times, but I think that's not unusual in drug development. We've also had to battle through COVID and challenging stock markets, but the company and the board are very committed to sticking to strategies, which is what we've done. And we've done, in the meantime, we've done some great deals, bringing in Sporkov, but also NTCDM3, and we've now done a partnering deal there. So we think we continue to deliver. Obviously, that's not always reflected in share price, which is something we need to keep working at. And as I said earlier, acknowledge the comments from certain people on discounts and share price performance. But we believe that in London AIM markets, life science markets, there are these cycles, and we're still very well positioned to deliver significant value if we keep delivering the strategy. So I think unless there's anything else, Sean, I'm going to stop there, and we can potentially take respond to questions, some of which have been pre-submitted, if that's correct, Alessandro.
Yes, Neil, Sean, thank you very much for your presentation. Ladies and gentlemen, please do continue to submit your questions just by using the Q&A tab, which is situated on the top right-hand corner of your screen. But just while Neil and Sean take a few moments to review those questions submitted today, I'd like to remind you that a recording of this presentation, along with a copy of the slides and the published Q&A, can be accessed via your investor dashboard. As you can see, we received a number of questions throughout today's presentation, and if I could just ask you to read out the questions and give responses where it is appropriate to do so, I'll pick up from you both at the end.
So thanks, Alessandro. I mean, obviously, I think we've tried to address some of the questions regarding discount and the structuring of the terms regarding why we needed to raise money with Sabellus. I think we've responded to most of those, we've responded on the discount, and I'm not sure there's much else we can say on that. But we obviously take these decisions very seriously, and it reflects the market interest in life science companies at those prices as at today. Having said that, we did have great interest from a range of investors. I think the feedback we had, Sean, from the brokers was that the investors we met, broadly speaking, not all of them, because not everyone invested, were very positive on the company and the deal and wanted to invest. But the market and the investors look back at the historical performance, and the price they set obviously was at a discount. So I think, Sean, we've not much more we can say on that, to be honest.
Yeah, no, I agree. I agree. Yeah.
And in terms of partnering for XS73, again, we're very publicly setting ourselves the target of doing a partnering deal. which come up during the investor presentations. I think, you know, the line we took was, we're not looking to do a better deal than Sabella, but it would be a different structure, but it could potentially be a bigger deal because we own all of Exeter 73 apart from China rights, so regional rights. Our partner China Medical Systems has, so we potentially can capture more of the upside there, because we obviously in-licensed M3 from Professor Dale Girding over 2 years ago. It's also Exeter 73 is a larger market, we believe, a larger market opportunity, and potentially we can look at different structuring. There will be different sensitivities from a partner in terms of where the financial terms arise, in terms of everything, royalty rates, upfronts, etc. So we're fully we go in with our own preferred set of terms always into any negotiations. And at the moment, yeah, we're sort of in that stage where we're looking to really get partners into data rooms and have serious discussions. And as ever, we will find out what interest there is over the next months. But definitely, we're looking to close a deal which delivers value to the company. And the positives on the Sabella deal, apart from their strength as a specialized partner, it removes that cash overhang for having to fund who's going to pay for the phase 3 studies. Often in pharmaceutical deals where there are upfronts, the money isn't sort of free cash that could be paid out in some super dividend. It often is an upfront which then has to be spent on the clinical studies anyway. So we think we have a very good structure, which Sabella and us have agreed, whereby yes, there is a relatively low upfront perhaps, but what you do have is a very significant investment from Sabella, potentially in the complete clinical development plan through to registration and launch, which is tens of millions of dollars, which Destiny Pharma, if it goes to plan, won't have to find that money. So the dilution there to shareholders trying to fund that would have been significant. So these are the decisions the board has reviewed and taken in looking at this process. With Exeter 73, I'm sure there will be different discussions, but different sensitivities hopefully with the partners that we get close to in terms of timesheets, but we'll find out more during this year. I'm just looking at some other questions here. I mean, there is a question. I acknowledge that somebody's asked a question about insider trading and market abuse. There any issues such as that, please address to the authorities or brokers. I've got no evidence of any of that. The company has followed all rules with advisors, but if people have any concerns there, of course, follow them up with the right authorities. And if we have any reports of that, we'll of course hand it on to brokers. But I'm not aware of anything such as that happening. But please, if anyone has any concerns, pass them on to the appropriate authorities. Somebody's asked a question about Sabella their market assessments, which is a very good point, because obviously, obviously we can't talk for Sabella, but they are a very well-backed expert company in this GI space, looking to, in a sort of classical specialty pharma model, to trade and have revenues, and obviously those products generate net cash into the company. But at the same time, they are prepared to invest in drug development, late stage drug development. But I think it's fair to say that specialty pharma really look to reduce the risk of when they do this sort of drug development, because they're very focused on delivering a overall profitable company. I think it's fair to say that Sabella did look at other assets in the CDIS space. I think we're aware of that, and selected M3. So they obviously have done the deal because they think it's a great asset and has a great chance at success. We obviously don't know exactly what they looked at when and where. Can't comment on that, but I think it's obvious that they did look at other opportunities, but selected this as an opportunity they wanted to complete a transaction on. So again, it comes back to the point that these partnering deals, from what I describe sort of hard-nosed specialty pharma players, are a good validation of the potential of an asset, because they don't have to do deals such as these, and they do have to be very careful when they do invest in clinical development that it's the risk is reduced, because their ultimate goal is to deliver very profitable revenue generating companies. There's a question about EIS VCT. I think it's fair to say, Sean, there's no EIS VCT left. It's been used up over the life of the company.
Yeah, that's what I mentioned earlier, which kind of fed into our really going out to raise money from new investors as well, because we get as a knowledge intensive company, we have a £20 million life limit, and that was fully used up in the previous funding last March.
There's a question on what share of the royalties and milestones we receive. We'll have to go back to Professor Girding, the original inventor. It's not publicly disclosed, but it's it's effectively sort of a minority overall. Obviously, any asset you bring in of that quality at phase 2, of course, you have to recognise the value that you've acquired and pay a proportion of what you receive. But we've negotiated good terms, and we've done our own internal analysis of the sort of net present value delivered. And so the net implies, of course, that we take into account what we have to pay out to Professor Girding, and it's a significant multiple of our current share price just by closing this deal for the US rights. So we're very comfortable with the value we've added by the terms we've negotiated. But of course, a proportion of that success base goes back to the original inventor, as is typical in deals of this type. I'm just again looking through the some of these questions in terms of selling on royalty rights in the future. Again, down the track, perhaps when a product's sold, this does happen potentially. I think it's not something we've looked at recently, but I think that's. I think hope if the product is launched and generating a regular royalty stream, of course, you move into a different area of monetization potentially. But let's see. That's a few years away yet. I think some of these other questions, some of them are not necessarily straightforward to answer. Again, if they're relating to discount and unhappiness over the terms, then or people need to address such concerns to the authorities. The company's got no evidence of anything that's been done incorrectly. So sure, I'm just looking at these questions now. I can't think of any others. Are there any others we should pick up?
Well, there's one which is asking if we're doing anything to raise visibility in the US, and I think what we can say there is that certainly, Neil and I were at JP Morgan in January, and we are we're working with a US IR firm, and we are looking to sort of increase our visibility in the US. Obviously, a significant market, both from a funding sourcing point of view, and obviously our two lead assets, the biggest markets for them are the US. So we are active there, and we are sort of looking this year to sort of continue to do that. US market, NASDAQ still difficult, but it's certainly something which is within our thinking, perhaps over the medium term.
Okay, there's one question regarding NTCDM3 and other deals that we're looking to do. So yes, of course, as with all of our assets, we're always networking and looking to talk with other parties who may be interested in collaborating, out-licensing deals, and there is interest in M3 outside of the US. My belief is that now we're closing this deal with Sabella, we have clarity on where we're going with a partner for the US rights, and also the phase 3 plans. As that progresses, that talking to other players in Europe and elsewhere, of course, they will see greater clarity on what's happening and who's paying for the phase 3s, and definitely we think that interest will be increased. So we'll look to talk to them, of course, and as we said, look to close other deals. The clinical trial package, the phase 3 package that we're looking to do with Sabella under this deal, will meet the requirements of the FDA and Europe. So you won't have to carry out, it's not expected you have to carry out additional studies in Europe, because the idea is that the phase 3 meets the requirements of those key regulators. Obviously, Japan would be different. So I think it is a big step forward, and we will push very hard to close these additional deals on N3 in other territories, but again, also XS73 nasal. And it's very clear from investor meetings that we've had in the last 2 or 3 weeks that partnering and that validation, but also the partners bringing funds to put to work on these clinical studies is very much a strategy that is supported by investors. So it will be a top priority for the company as we move forward, and we'll take on board that clear support and make sure we do everything we can to deliver further success. So I was going to stop there, Alessandro, just looking at some of the
Yeah.
questions.
No, Sean, thank you very much. I think you've addressed those questions you can from investors. And of course, the company will review all the questions submitted today and will publish those responses on the Investor Meet Company platform. But just before redirecting investors to provide you with their feedback, which I know is particularly important to the company, Neil, could I just ask you for a few closing comments?
Yes, no, thank you. So thank everybody for your interest. We're really pleased with the transaction. The backdrop is very difficult markets, London AIM life science companies, but we've pushed on, and this is exactly what we said we'd do. We said we'd deliver a partner deal on M3, and we have done. And they're an excellent company. It's a very good deal, and now we look forward to working together and delivering the activities that show that this is a great partnership. And there's more to come on M3 in other territories, but as we keep saying, Exit 73 nasal now is the #1 priority to close partnering transactions around that asset. And at the same time, we'll bring forward the earlier programs. We'll keep our focus on infection prevention, and we do all we can to deliver value to shareholders, but also to deliver new medicines to patients who are currently suffering from these terrible infections. So thank you very much.
Neil, Sean, thank you very much for updating investors today. Could I please ask investors not to close the session, as you'll now be automatically redirected to provide your feedback in order that the management team can better understand your views and expectations. This will only take a few moments to complete, but I'm sure will be greatly valued by the company. On behalf of the management team of Destiny Pharma PLC, we'd like to thank you for attending today's presentation, and good morning to you all.